Cahill, the young woman who says she was raped by an IRA member when she was just 16 and then had her trauma increased by an internal IRA investigation. Her story has also drawn in Sinn Fein President Gerry Adams, who denies her claim that they discussed both the rape allegation and the internal IRA investigation. We're joined now from Belfast by Sinn Fein MLA Jennifer Mc Cann, who's Junior Minister at the Office of the First and Deputy First Minister, and here in studio by Labour Senator Ivana Bacik. Jennifer Mc Cann in Belfast, thanks for joining us tonight. I suppose the obvious first question is, do you believe Mairia Cahill?
Well, can I say that back in 2005, Mairia told me about the case of the rape and sexual abuse, and I could tell when she was speaking to me, I was working with her at the time in the community forum, that she was still deeply traumatised by that. So yes, I did believe her. I believed that she had been sexually abused. But can I just say that you know, and I have to point out that it was wrong what happened to Mairia, and I think that you know that we need to help and support her through that. But I think that the claims that Mairia made, that Sinn Fein tried to cover that up, were totally unfounded. And I mean, I have been speaking to a number of Republicans over this past week, and they have told me, several of them have told me that at the time that they did tell Mairia or advise Mairia, you know, to seek counselling, to tell her family, and some of them actually told her to contact the police. So I think that to say that it was covered up by Sinn Fein are totally unfounded. OK,
so you accept her story about the sexual abuse and the rape. Do you accept her story about the internal IRA investigation, the kangaroo court?
Well, I don't know anything about that, but if it happened in the way Mairia said it did, I have to say it's totally wrong. I know at the time, you know, there was no confidence in policing in our community. I know that there was no accountability for policing, and I know that the community did sometimes ask Republicans to deal with issues, and some of those issues included sexual abuse as well. Now, people weren't equipped to do that, and the way it was handled was wrong. But I would just want to say, back into...
Sorry to cut across you, but I just want to be clear about this. Are you accepting that it did happen, that there was an internal IRA investigation? I mean, I understand you were a member of the IRA yourself, so you probably would have some knowledge of how the internal structures operate.
Well, look, can I just say, I don't know anything about it. I know that Mairia made those claims. I know that there has been a court case and people have been acquitted. But can I just say that many Republicans done their best to help and support Mairia, myself included. You know, we did what we could to help her, and as I said before, you know, I think that the claims to say that there was a cover-up, and particularly that Sinn Féin to try to cover this up, are totally unfounded.
So you say you don't know about this particular IRA investigation, but you know of others that have taken place, or that was the way that these were dealt with. Gerry Adams has made that clear in his blog last night. No,
what I said was that during those years, the community people looked to Republicans to deal with issues like you know, for instance, joyriding and issues like that. And there were people who were obviously shot. There were people who were expelled from the community and told to leave the country. So I believe that those cases did happen. In Mairia's case, I don't know anything about that. But can I say that, again, as a victim of sexual abuse, she is entitled to justice through the courts.
Wouldn't it be extraordinary in a case like this, with somebody coming from a family that's so prominent in Republican circles? Wouldn't it be extraordinary if the IRA didn't investigate?
Well, can I say, I mean, I can just repeat what I've said. I don't know anything about it. Mairia didn't tell me until 2005, until we were both working together. The attack had taken place on her about 5 or 6 years previous to that. And I did my utmost to help her. I advised her to seek counselling. I was very, very concerned about her well-being, her health and well-being at the time. And so concerned that I actually asked her to stay in my home one night because I was afraid she was vulnerable. I was afraid of leaving her on her own. And I know that many Republicans feel, and I've spoken to many Republicans, and they also did their best to help and support Mairia through that.
But this happened in this. She claims that the internal IRA investigation happened in 1999. Now, there was no war going on in 1999, so presumably, if it was being dealt with within the IRA, it was simply because the Republican movement didn't find it convenient to deal with the police at that time.
Well, there was no real confidence in policing at that time in the local community. There was no accountability for policing. And, you know, I mean, Republicans were the first to take a step to try to get people to engage with the police in our communities. And we were very much at the forefront of pushing that through. But can I just say, you know, I mean, the claims that there was a cover-up are totally unfounded. And I believe that people did help and supported Mairia in whatever way they could. Oh. And to me, can I also say, I mean, that support and that offer of that help and support is still there.
OK, Ivana Bacik, what do you make of that? Sinn Fein was only trying to help?
Well, I think it's very hard to sit here and listen to that. I think for anyone who's ever worked with sex abuse survivors or survivors of institutional abuse or sex abuse, to hear the sort of partial vindication of Mairia Cahill's story from Sinn Fein spokespersons, particularly from women in Sinn Fein, is very hard, because what they're now saying is they do believe that she was raped and that she was abused, but effectively that they don't believe her account of the IRA investigation. And it's very hard to take that from Sinn Fein and the IRA. There's clearly been a culture of cover-up that has been going on, and I think this case and Mairia Cahill's bravery in coming forward has exposed, and I think it's reminded us about what we did know was going on within the IRA, the sort of kangaroo courts, the punishment shootings and beatings, but it's also exposed a much darker side to that again, which is where sex abuse allegations made against members of the IRA were also being covered up. It's very much reminiscent of the way in which the Catholic Church dealt with sex abuse allegations in this country. But
Sinn Fein, and we heard it again tonight from Jennifer, Sinn Fein will point out that this case did go to court. And that Mairia, for her own reasons, and she's explained them, withdrew her support for the case. So, from that point of view, you know, it went to court and
again,
the
David,
were acquitted.
as I say, I've worked in the past as a practising barrister representing survivors of abuse in residential institutions, people who were abused often for many years by members of religious orders, by members of the church, and there was a culture of cover-up that went on that really demeaned and belittled victims and survivors, many of whom found it very hard to come forward, many of whom never went to the authorities, some of whom went to the church, and we know how that went, where senior figures in the Catholic Church and in religious orders colluded in covering up the abuse and indeed in moving abusers on to continue their abuse. And this is what this sounds like to me and to others. Survivors of abuse may have huge difficulty in coming forward and telling the story of their abuse and disclosing. When they do tell, they should be supported and given due process and given support in going to the appropriate authorities, not interrogated in this way by some sort of kangaroo court that's been set up like this. This, to me, is just appalling treatment of survivors of abuse.
Jennifer McCann, if I could go back to you in Belfast, you say that there was no confidence in policing in the north at that time, but doesn't this just show how little confidence could be placed in the Republican movement, and the IRA in particular, to actually police itself?
Well, can I go back just to some of the comments, sir? And can I just say that you know, I mean, the community policed itself in the communities that we lived in those times. And there was no confidence in policing, and to be honest with you, there was no accountability either in policing.
But there's no accountability within the IRA either.
And this was an allegation against a senior IRA figure.
Just let her answer.
But can I just say that there was no cover-up in terms of this from Sinn Fein, and that's what I'm saying. Now, I don't know what happened in terms of any inquiry, but all I'm saying is that if it happened in the way Mairia said it happened, then it was wrong. Well, and I'm very clearly, but can I just make the point? I'm very, very clearly saying that Republicans did try to support her and did try to help her in whatever way they could. And some people have told me this week that they did actually try to encourage her to go to the police. They tried to encourage her to go to counselling, and they you know, so they did.
I think she's made
Ivana?
She's made a very credible and very brave disclosure about the way she was treated by the IRA, and I think to anyone from the outside, it absolutely rings true. And I think the other thing that it does strike us is that this is not ancient history. This happened in the late 1990s, when the peace process was underway, when there were already movements being made towards a reconciliation in the north, and to continue to treat somebody who'd been abused in this way, particularly when the abuse allegation was against a senior figure in the IRA, of course that should have gone outside to policing authorities to see her get
Ivana
justice.
Bacik, Jennifer McCann, thank you both indeed for joining us.